Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, A New Level of Performance, How CarnoSyn 4X Opens Doors in Sports Nutrition. I'm Sean Maloney, editor of Nutraceuticals World, and I'll be your moderator for this event. This webinar is sponsored by Natural Alternatives International. Available exclusively from NAI, CarnoSyn 4X delivers over 4 times the bioavailability of conventional beta-alanine without paresthesia. Designed for sports nutrition brands seeking a premium performance ingredient, CarnoSyn 4X helps consumers increase strength and endurance, support recovery, and achieve results with a format-friendly ingredient designed for greater flexibility. NAI is a trusted formulator, manufacturer, and strategic partner to the world's leading sports nutrition brands. With over 40 years of ingredient innovation and regulatory expertise, NAI helps brands bring products to market that consumers trust, repurchase, and recommend. For more information, you can visit carnosyn.com and nai-online.com. So I have a few quick announcements before we start. Following today's presentation, we'll have a Q&A session. So I encourage you to submit questions you have using the box on your screen. Just note that if we don't get to your question here, then we can follow up with you afterward. If you're interested in closed captioning, you can click the CC button on your media player. You can also customize your viewing experience by moving the various windows on your screen. Lastly, NAI has made some resources available for the audience to download, and you can find those under the related content box. So I'm pleased to introduce Mark Ledoux, CEO and Chairman of the Board for Natural Alternatives International. Mark founded NAI in 1980 and has spent over 40 years as one of the most respected and longest-serving executives in the nutritional supplements industry. As Chairman Emeritus of the Natural Products Association, founding Chairman of CRN International, and a recognized NGO representative at the WHO, FAO, Codex Alimentarius Commission in Geneva, Mark has been a driving force in supplement industry regulation for decades. And with that, I'm excited to turn things over now to Mark Ledoux.
John, it's lovely to see you, and I welcome everybody to this important webinar today. It's really interesting how old things become new and new things become old. But in the area of sports nutrition, it's safe to say that CarnoSyn really unlocked the potential of millions of athletes into a higher degree of performance. And it did so based on the research that our former colleague, Dr. Roger Harris, had conducted, not only on creatine, but on beta-alanine. And here we are some, 25 years from that original research, and we've discovered something new. And that is phenomenally that we've figured out a way to take beta-alanine and make it more potent and enjoy less paresthesia, if none at all, in those people that are concerned about that sort of tingling effect. So I think it's important that we take a look at, okay, what are we talking about? When it comes to performance, you need to understand that what beta-alanine does in the body is it combines with a pretty plentiful supply of histidine, and it creates a substance called CarnoSyn. CarnoSyn is a dipeptide made up, again, of beta-alanine and histidine. But what does it do? Well, it acts as a very potent buffer to the creation of lactic acid. And by buffering the lactic acid, muscles, striated muscles in particular, that are being exerted through exercise are able to exercise longer before they hit that fatigue, that wall of fatigue caused by excessive lactic acid. One of the key issues associated with beta-alanine, though, is that we discovered 3.2 to 6.4 grams of beta-alanine is really required on a daily basis over a period of time to build up a reservoir of beta-alanine in the human body, such that when you are exercising, that you have a store of beta-alanine that can combine with histidine to create that buffering compound known as CarnoSyn. Well, CarnoSyn 4X is really an answer to a lingering question for those people, particularly women, who love the thought of better physical physique, more muscle definition. Look at what's going on with creatine and the women's adoption of ingesting creatine. Well, they'd love to take it with beta-alanine, but they don't want that flushing sensation. So as a consequence, our charter was to identify a way to take the beta-alanine molecule and protect it and coat it in some way so that we could get it through the gut into an area where it could be absorbed and metabolized appropriately without causing that paresthesia. So we came up with something quite amazing called CarnoSyn 4X. It's got all kinds of opportunities for use, not only in sports nutrition, but in nutrition for the elderly and people that are concerned about sarcopenia, particularly as it relates to the widespread use and adoption of GLP-1 medications, where a lot of people are losing weight. Unfortunately, they're losing fat and muscle mass. And so we've discovered a way to really counteract that as well. So what is CarnoSyn? Well, I've already shared with you, essentially, it's a bipeptide, which is generally found in muscles, but it's also found in the human brain. What does it do? Well, I originally shared with you that it has the capacity to buffer lactic acid. Well, that's important because you can increase your endurance, your time to exhaustion in muscle exertion without hitting the wall prematurely. It can also regulate calcium signaling for stronger and more forceful muscle contractions. It also improves exercise-induced oxidative repair. So there's a lot of damage that takes place to muscles. In fact, most professional trainers will tell you you have to literally tear the muscle apart in order to strengthen it. So what CarnoSyn does is it enhances exercise-induced damage repair. It also supports cognitive function and cognitive performance to help athletes withstand physical and mental stress. We did a study a few years ago and revisited it recently for people that were suffering, military people that were suffering from PTSD. And we discovered that this had some profound effects on the ability to hopefully counteract that debilitating condition. So why do we need CarnoSyn in the body to start with? Well, not everybody is a professional athlete. Not everybody's going to be an Olympian, but we certainly don't want to not exercise and take advantage of our ability to flex and maintain proper muscle mass and skeletal health. Well, what we discovered is about the age of 30, the amount of CarnoSyn in your system actually starts to reduce. By the time you're 70 years of age, you've lost over 60% of CarnoSyn. It's also linked not only to cognitive performance, but also physical problems. And it contributes to cellular aging when you have a deficit of CarnoSyn. How does this stuff work? Well, beta-alanine, which you'd have to have an enormous amount of animal protein in order to secure even minimal levels in your daily diet of beta-alanine. But assuming you supplement with beta-alanine, you have extraordinary levels of histidine present in your body from general food supply today. And those two combine in a metabolic reaction to generate CarnoSyn, which allows your muscle to actually function longer before it becomes exhausted. Now, some of the barriers for beta-alanine in the past have been at higher doses, it can cause a real tingly sensation around the lips, the ears, fingers, even your neck. And it just has that pins and needles feeling often associated with things like niacin flush. So it can really negatively impact adoption. I was speaking at a conference earlier this year in La Jolla, and several of the speakers said, man, we'd love if we could get beta-alanine without the tingles. And I said, well, you'll be happy to know it's now available. And it's in particular women who are starting to really see the benefits of creatine in their daily supplementation are seeing even better results with creatine and CarnoSyn 4X being consumed simultaneously. So conventional beta-alanine, as I mentioned, requires between 3.2 and 6.4 grams a day to be effective. It's difficult to fit that into smaller formats or create multi-benefit formulas. So CarnoSyn 4X, what did we do? Well, first of all, we decided it was time to figure out how to engineer a material that would be more bioavailable than its core underlying product and avoid paresthesia and provide flexibility for formulators in order to put this in liquids and or in protein powders or meal replacements or even other food sources. So what did we do? Well, we put it through its paces and we decided upon a patent pending process which really coats the molecule, almost sort of like micellization of the molecule. And we gave it to people and we said, all right, we're going to do some tests to see how much CarnoSyn is actually present in your body. And this peer-reviewed study was published and it showed that plasma beta-alanine concentrations measured over 8 hours showed that our CarnoSyn 4X was significantly higher and it had more sustained absorption capability. That chart says a lot right there. 4 times increase in circulating beta-alanine concentrations in a human being. More importantly, we achieved our primary objective in that we wanted to lower, if not eliminate, paresthesia. And the study reported that the VAS score, or the visual analog score, was significantly lower than conventional beta-alanine, which is not a protected molecule, supporting improved consumer compliance. So, what does CarnoSyn 4X afford the formulator? Well, it can be encapsulated, it's free-flowing, it's water-soluble, it is really resistant to thermal processing, it's in a fine powder, and there are no clumps associated with it. So there's a whole panorama of formulations that can utilize CarnoSyn 4X. So let's talk a little bit about what we did to create this molecule. First of all, we took beta-alanine, which we sourced from a unique source in Japan, and we wrap it in a micellar coating that protects it throughout the gastrointestinal tract. The coated particles go right through the gut lining cells, bypassing restricted absorption pathways. Simultaneously, standard intestinal digestion releases more beta-alanine in the gut. And ultimately, it's protected from oxidation and premature excretion in the bloodstream. More beta-alanine, therefore, reaches the muscles and the brain. Small format opportunities I've already alluded to, capsules, tablets, powders, even chewable formulations or gummies. There are also some really interesting compounds that should be considered to formulate with CarnoSyn 4X. Obviously, the most important one that people are already flocking to is the use of creatine. Moreover, collagen is offering a substantial benefit for many, many people, especially those that are over the age of 30. Taurine, which is that amino acid often linked to heart muscle benefit and is probably one of the predominant amino acids found in energy drinks, is really an essential compound. And I can see several people consider right now the utilization of taurine with CarnoSyn 4X, not only for muscle benefit, but also for brain function enhancement. Also, mixing it with electrolytes. You know, there's a huge industry today that's really been predicated on restoration of electrolyte levels in humans, particularly those that are exercised in or engaged in vigorous exercise. And then, of course, branch chain amino acids, the isoleucines, leucines, valines, are suitable candidates for combination with CarnoSyn 4X. More and more people are really adopting fitness in their lifestyle. So you're starting to see new types of consumers. When I traveled to Florida, for example, you see everybody all engaged in either golf or pickleball, tennis, etc. I've never seen so many people on pickleball courts in my life just in the last few years. When I'm in Europe, I have friends and we go play something called padel, or Padel. And what's interesting about that is it's kind of a combination of squash and pickleball, and it's very energy intensive. But there's also recreational athletes. I've talked to a lot of Olympians who, post their Olympic career are still very much engaged in staying in shape, mountain climbing, skiing, all types of things that really require excellent muscle capacity, because a lot of these sports are actually pretty strenuous. There's also lifestyle sports and personal fitness activities. A lot more people are relying upon the benefits of personal trainers, particularly as they get older. They don't want to injure themselves by doing the wrong type of exercise. So they're adopting more of a cautious approach, but one that still requires physical exertion. Now, the sports nutrition claims, we've seen over 50 clinical studies that have demonstrated the use of beta-alanine, in particular CarnoSyn. We've seen it increase working and exercise capacity, decreasing acidosis, delaying fatigue during workouts, improving the endurance of muscles, increasing strength, enhancing mental acumen and focus, improving speed, enhancing the buffering capacity of muscles, speeding up recovery from intense exercise, enhancing training, improving overall muscle performance, and elevating muscle carnosine levels. All of those backed by clinical science on human beings. CarnoSyn is the only beta-alanine, and I mean the only beta-alanine, that has gone through the rigorous process of applying for a new dietary ingredient status, and in point of fact was awarded the only one to date by the FDA. The NDI report is number 1103. So we are the only beta-alanine on the planet that has undergone this rigorous evaluation, and the only one that's been given an NDI acceptable notification. So, questions and answers. I'm sure we have a boatload of those, Sean.
Great. Thank you, Mark. That was really interesting. So right now we're going to get to some questions, but please note that if we don't get to your question here, we can and will follow up with you afterward. So Mark, this first question is really two parts. First, for brands already using CarnoSyn, what does the transition to 4X look like? And then second, how straightforward might it be to swap CarnoSyn 4X into an existing formula that already uses conventional beta-alanine?
Well, let's address the obvious benefit of CarnoSyn 4X. First of all, you use 4 times less to achieve the same outcome as you would achieve with beta-alanine CarnoSyn. So if you are constrained, for example, in the size of your dosing, and let's say you're giving 3.2 grams of beta-alanine, that'd be a pretty enormous tablet or enormous scoop of stuff. And unless it's CarnoSyn 4X, you're going to generally cause paresthesia. 3.2 grams is a lot of beta-alanine. If you divide that by 4, you're giving 800 milligrams of CarnoSyn 4X. So you're saving 2,400 milligrams of space in your formula, and you're getting the same benefit with substantially no paresthesia. So there's that. For people that are historically not wanting that tingly sensation, and I'm thinking about a large concentration of demographics, largely women, they don't want to feel that paresthesia. And you've opened up an entire segment of the marketplace by substituting CarnoSyn 4X for CarnoSyn or beta-alanine. And whether you're using a generic form of beta-alanine, which we don't recommend, or you're using our CarnoSyn, transitioning to CarnoSyn 4X is a significant benefit, not only to the consumer, but to the brand in formulation technology and in some cost savings as well.
Yeah. Now you mentioned the sort of fitness focused, lifestyle, recreational athlete segment, which still in many ways feels like a largely untapped, underserved audience. Where do you see the most exciting growth opportunities for brands adopting CarnoSyn 4X?
Well, I think people who have been exposed to beta-alanine already know its benefit. But necessarily, I think we need to address a whole new population. And that population is growing by leaps and bounds daily. These are the people that are utilizing these GLP-1 medications, whether they're orally administered or injected. And it's really interesting if you stop and think about some of the key components here. Both of the drugs, the primary drugs that have been used, are basically peptides. They're large chain combinations of amino acids that have been studied and identified as benefiting in weight loss by virtue of stimulating glucagon-like protein responses or any number of other metabolic pathways. Unfortunately, in losing weight because you're controlling your appetite through intervention, people are eating less, and they're certainly eating less protein, and they're eating less carbohydrates, and the chances of them securing adequate levels of nutrients to preserve their muscle mass are pretty much slim and none. And whether it's Ozempic or Mounjaro or tirzepatide, or even the new one that's being studied, which again is a peptide combination called retatrutide, under no circumstance are you getting adequate amounts of proteins, and you're clearly not getting adequate amounts of beta-alanine to help preserve your muscle mass from befalling calorie and protein deficient diets brought on by these medical interventions. So if you really are serious about maintaining your health long after you're done with losing your intended weight, the thing you have to do is prevent the sarcopenia, or the muscle wasting that takes place with these interventions. The other reality of it is, after the age of 40 or 50, this muscle degradation called sarcopenia is a natural event. It just goes along with aging. I'm 72. I still work out. I'm still climbing mountains. I'm still water skiing. I'm still doing a lot of fun stuff, but I've been taking CarnoSyn now for years. And in point of fact, I think, when you step on these scales and it tells you this is your metabolic age, et cetera, even though I'm 72, my scale tells me my age is 50. Well, I'm happy with that outcome, but not everybody has had access to the type of supplementation that I utilize. And so now I think we're opening up millions and millions of consumers to the benefits of CarnoSyn, which I think will just be phenomenal.
Yeah, yeah, and that's certainly why creatine in part has exploded alongside at the same time with these GLP-1 medications. Great. And you presented some data related to the decline of carnosine with age. What kind of opportunity do you see for CarnoSyn for X in this burgeoning healthy aging, active longevity space?
I think the healthy aging space, I mean, let's face it, the demographics of many of the Western nations are demonstrating a significant increase in people over the age of 60. Unfortunately, many of those have suffered from poor diet and exercise habits. Unfortunately, the food industry has not been a good friend to many of us in the Western culture by virtue of all the additives that have been added to the foods. I've often said we're probably the most underfed, overfed, undernourished populace on the planet, and I'm speaking roughly of Americans. But realistically, the marketplace for healthy aging for CarnoSyn 4X, I think is going to conceivably dwarf that for sports nutrition. And I say that with some degree of confidence in that there isn't really anything else out there that can help with so many different functions to protect and preserve your muscle mass, your brain function, stimulate your immune system, fundamentally protect your cardiac system than CarnoSyn 4X. And as people get older, they eat less protein in general anyway. They eat less food in general. And so if you're having reduced intake of essential proteins, particularly animal proteins, you're not going to get enough beta-alanine. If you're not going to get beta-alanine in your diet, you certainly need it in a supplement form, or you're going to see an acceleration of paresthesia and a host of other, not paresthesia, you're going to see an acceleration of sarcopenia. And so to come up with CarnoSyn 4X, which doesn't create paresthesia, which helps preserve muscle mass in young and older people, I think we got a real tiger by the tail here.
Yeah, certainly. Great. Well, I think that's a good place to wrap up for today, but thank you, Mark, for all your insights. And thank you to Natural Alternatives International for the partnership. This webcast will be archived on our website, nutraceuticalsworld.com, for on-demand viewing. For Nutraceuticals World, I'm Sean Maloney. Thanks for listening and have a great day.